Laura's phone buzzed early that Friday morning, pulling her from the quiet of her kitchen. It was David, her husband, on the line. He had a last-minute business trip to Chicago and, almost casually, suggested she take Jake, their stepson, along for a few days. Laura froze, caught between hesitation and curiosity. Jake had recently turned 18 and was at that awkward stage between adolescence and adulthood. Eager to explore independence but still needing guidance. The thought of traveling with him alone seemed unusual. Yet she noticed the faint excitement in his voice when she told him. The morning was crisp, with the scent of coffee lingering in the air as Laura prepared for the trip. Jake was buzzing with energy, his backpack slung over one shoulder, boarding pass in hand, and a grin that revealed both anticipation and nervousness. Laura studied him quietly, noting how much he had changed in the past few years. His shoulders were broader, his voice deeper. Yet his eyes still held the same curiosity and openness she had first. Admired in him that the drive to the airport was filled with light conversation. Laura asked about his plans after high school, and he explained with enthusiasm how he wanted to explore internships and maybe start college in the fall. He spoke freely about his friends, hobbies, and dreams, occasionally glancing at Laura with the kind of tentative trust he usually reserved for his father. Laura smiled softly, realizing this was an opportunity to bond in a way they hadn't before. At the airport, the hum of travelers and announcements created a lively backdrop as they checked in. Jake fidgeted slightly, nervous about the flight, while Laura gently reassured him, sharing tips about airport security and boarding. Once settled on the plane, they discovered that the empty middle seat between them gave them a comfortable space. They talked about trivial things first, what movies they liked, favorite music, and childhood memories, then moved into deeper territory. Laura shared her experiences from past business trips, mistakes she had made, and lessons learned. Jake listened intently, asking questions, laughing at funny anecdotes, and even offering his own reflections. By the time the plane began its descent into Chicago, the air between them felt warmer, more personal, and unexpectedly close. The city unfolded before them in a blur of lights and movement. Chicago's skyline reflected off the river, and the streets bustled with life. Laura booked them into a modest but comfortable hotel overlooking the cityscape. Jake, excited as a child on a first trip, immediately began photographing the view from their window. Laura joined him, capturing the same scenes with her phone, noticing how seeing the city through his eyes made her feel like a visitor herself. Their first evening out involved exploring a nearby cafe, a quaint little place with soft jazz playing in the background. They talked about everything and nothing: school experiences, family memories, and favorite foods. Laura noticed Jake's maturity in conversation, his ability to reflect on events thoughtfully. There was a sense of ease between them that surprised her. She had expected awkward pauses or forced small talk, yet their dialogue flowed naturally, occasionally touching on personal challenges in a way that invited honesty. As they returned to the hotel, the elevator ride was quiet but not uncomfortable. Laura reflected on the day, realizing that the trip was already stretching beyond its original purpose of family logistics. It was becoming an experience that allowed them to see each other differently. She caught glimpses of Jake's quiet sensitivity, his thoughtfulness, and the subtle ways he observed and interacted with the world. For his part, Jake seemed more relaxed, laughing openly, teasing lightly, and sharing thoughts he usually kept private at home. That night, Laura lingered in the hotel room, looking out at the shimmering lights of Chicago. Jake had unpacked quickly and was reading a book by the window. She felt a quiet, almost protective affection for him, not as a parent in a conventional sense, but as someone witnessing a young adult stepping into the world. She wondered how these few days could shape their bond, how experiences outside the routine of daily life might allow them to connect in ways neither of them anticipated. They talked before bed, not about flights or meetings, but about hopes, fears, and expectations. Jake admitted that traveling alone with Laura had made him feel more independent, yet supported at the same time. Laura shared stories of moments in her own life when guidance had made all the difference. and they laughed softly at shared moments of embarrassment or awkwardness. The night ended with a comfortable silence, both lost in thought, both aware that something significant had begun. The next morning, Laura awoke to the distant hum of traffic and sunlight spilling across the hotel room. Jake was already up, organizing his day with surprising attention to detail. He seemed eager yet calm, a combination of teenage energy and young adult composure. Laura watched him, noticing the subtle changes in his demeanor compared to Boston, more observant, more open, and curiously reflective. Breakfast was simple but lively. They shared a table by the window, overlooking the city streets below, and talked about their plans for the day. Laura had scheduled a few business-related tasks, but Jake wanted to accompany her, intrigued by the professional world. She agreed, realizing that even in these small choices, the trip was shaping itself into something beyond logistics. It was becoming a shared journey of growth, understanding, and mutual discovery. As they left the hotel, Laura noticed how Jake naturally stepped into a more mature posture. He held the door, navigated crowded sidewalks with awareness, and spoke thoughtfully with the people they encountered. It was striking to see him evolve before her eyes, and she felt a mixture of pride, surprise, and curiosity about the young man he was becoming. The energy between them was different, now less casual, more attentive, more emotionally resonant. By mid-morning, as they walked through Chicago's streets, visiting cafes and small shops, Laura sensed the subtle shift in their dynamic. Conversations flowed freely, yet there was a depth she hadn't anticipated. Jake asked questions that revealed his growing insight into life, while Laura found herself sharing more personal reflections than she usually would with anyone. There was a soft, mutual trust forming, grounded in respect, humor, and shared curiosity. Evening approached, and with it came the realization that the trip was not just a simple family obligation. The city lights flickered on, reflections dancing across the river, and Laura felt a quiet thrill of connection she hadn't expected. It was not romantic, not inappropriate, but profoundly personal. Their shared experiences were weaving a tapestry of understanding, empathy, and emotional intimacy. Both recognized it without naming its unspoken awareness that the next few days could redefine their relationship in ways that would last far beyond Chicago. As Laura turned off the bedside lamp that night, she glanced at Jake reading by the window and smiled softly. This business trip, initially mundane and routine, had begun to reveal layers of personal growth, subtle connection, and emotional depth. For the first time, Laura felt the true power of shared experiences. The way travel and conversation could transform the ordinary into something meaningful, and she knew instinctively that this was only the beginning. The next morning, Laura awoke to the soft light streaming through the hotel curtains, the distant hum of Chicago traffic filling the room. Jake was already awake, quietly getting ready for the day. His excitement from the first day had not faded. If anything, it had intensified. He seemed determined to make the most of this trip, not just as a journey, but as a moment of exploration and growth. Laura felt a quiet pride observing him's focus, curiosity, and quiet confidence were far beyond what she had expected. After a quick breakfast in the hotel cafe, they set out to attend Laura's meetings. The city streets were alive with activity, and Jake was eager to accompany her, asking questions about her work, the clients she would meet, and how business negotiations unfolded. Laura appreciated his interest and decided to allow him to sit in on some of the discussions, thinking it might be educational. What she didn't anticipate was how naturally he would fit into these professional environments. During the first meeting, Jake observed quietly, jotting down notes and asking thoughtful questions at appropriate moments. His presence brought a light energy to the room. People responded to him warmly, smiling at his curiosity and insight. Laura noticed the subtle shift in atmosphere. The client seemed more relaxed, more willing to engage. She realized that Jake's attentiveness and genuine interest were opening doors she hadn't expected, and she felt a mix of admiration and surprise. Here was a young man navigating spaces meant for adults with grace, respect, and intelligence. After the meetings, Laura and Jake decided to explore a few cultural landmarks. Chicago's museums and parks offered a backdrop of inspiration, and Jake approached each exhibit with a genuine sense of wonder. Laura walked beside him, sharing her own reflections on art, history, and architecture. Their conversations moved from factual observations to personal stories, memories of childhood visits to museums, favorite books that had left an impression, and lessons learned from life experiences. Each conversation revealed more about Jake's character, his sensitivity, his thoughtfulness, and his capacity for empathy. During a quiet moment in a park overlooking the river, Jake opened up about his fears and uncertainties. He spoke softly about feeling out of place sometimes, about the pressure to succeed in ways he wasn't sure he could, and about his desire to be understood. Laura listened attentively, offering reassurance without judgment. She shared some of her own struggles when she was his age, the mistakes she had made, the lessons learned, and the ways she had navigated uncertainty. Jake nodded thoughtfully, clearly absorbing her words, and for a moment, the conversation felt like a bridge connecting their experiences across generations. Lunch was at a small, cozy cafe near the waterfront. The atmosphere was relaxed, and they continued their dialogue, moving seamlessly between light-hearted banter and more serious reflections. Jake's openness impressed Laura. She realized that the trust they were building was deepening quickly. It was a connection grounded in respect, shared experience, and genuine attention to each other's thoughts and feelings. She felt a quiet satisfaction this trip was proving to be more meaningful than she had anticipated. The afternoon brought a walk along the Riverwalk. Chicago's skyline gleamed in the late afternoon sun, and Laura found herself slowing her pace to match Jake's. They spoke about the city, the way its architecture reflected history and ambition, and how people's lives intertwined in complex ways. Jake asked questions about her experiences traveling for work, and Laura responded with candid stories, times when she had felt lost, uncertain, or overwhelmed, and how she had found her way through perseverance and reflection. The conversation was candid yet appropriate, emotionally intimate but fully safe. A meeting of minds that strengthened their bond. As evening approached, they returned to the hotel for a brief rest. Jake was unusually reflective, quietly reading in the corner while Laura prepared for a casual dinner. She watched him, noticing how much he had matured in just a day. The difference wasn't dramatic, it was subtle, in the way he carried himself, the way he listened, and the way he expressed curiosity and thoughtfulness. Laura felt a swell of admiration and a quiet warmth, recognizing that their relationship was evolving into something far richer than routine stepmother-stepson interaction. Dinner that night was at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city lights. The view was breathtaking, the atmosphere relaxed, and their conversation continued to flow naturally. Jake shared dreams he had been hesitant to voice at home, plans for college, potential careers, and ambitions to travel and explore the world. Laura listened, offering encouragement and thoughtful advice, careful not to impose but genuinely invested in his reflections. She realized that the trip had created a safe space for dialogue, a space where both could be open, honest, and reflective. At one point, Jake paused and looked at Laura with a sincerity that caught her off guard. "I don't always say it, but I really appreciate how you listen, and how you actually understand me," he said softly. Laura felt a lump in her throat. It was a moment that crystallized everything the trip had become, a connection built on trust, empathy, and emotional closeness. There was no inappropriate tension, but there was undeniable depth in their bond, a recognition that they were learning from each other in profound ways. Back at the hotel, the night air was cool and quiet. Laura and Jake settled into the room, sharing small routines, packing, organizing, and preparing for the next day. They played quiet games, read books side by side, and reflected on the experiences of the day. The room was filled with a calm intimacy, a sense of comfort that only comes from shared experiences and mutual understanding. Laura marveled at how natural it felt, how effortless the connection had become, and how much she had learned about Jake, not just as her stepson, but as a thoughtful, introspective young adult. Before bed, They sat by the window overlooking the river. The city lights shimmered on the water, creating a reflective backdrop for their conversation. Jake spoke about his excitement for the future, his gratitude for the trip, and his desire to continue exploring life with openness and curiosity. Laura shared her own reflections, emphasizing the importance of seizing opportunities, listening actively, and cultivating relationships that matter. The dialogue was heartfelt, sincere, and emotionally rich, a moment of connection neither would forget. That night, Laura lay in bed reflecting on the day. She realized that this trip had transformed from a simple business-related errand into an emotional journey. She had seen Jake in a new light, confident, attentive, and thoughtful, yet still vulnerable enough to seek guidance and connection. She understood that the trust and closeness they had cultivated would shape their relationship moving forward. It wasn't a romantic or inappropriate connection. It was an emotional intimacy rooted in care, respect, and shared experiences. The next morning, Laura and Jake woke to the sound of the city stirring below. The energy between them had shifted subtly but significantly. There was a comfort, a sense of mutual understanding, and an unspoken acknowledgement that their bond had deepened in a meaningful way. Breakfast was quiet, reflective, but full of small exchanges, smiles, shared stories, and thoughtful observations about the day ahead. Their plans included a few more professional visits for Laura, and Jake expressed interest in observing again. Laura agreed, appreciating his genuine curiosity. Watching him interact with colleagues and clients, she was struck by his intelligence, empathy, and maturity. He asked insightful questions, listened attentively, and offered thoughtful reflections at the right moments. Laura felt proud and amazed, recognizing how much he had grown in just a couple of days. The afternoon included a walk through a nearby art museum. Jake's reactions to the exhibits were thoughtful and nuanced. He asked questions about symbolism, artistic techniques, and historical context. Laura responded with explanations, sometimes sharing anecdotes from her own travels and experiences with art. The conversation flowed seamlessly, moving from factual analysis to personal reflection, deepening the emotional connection between them. As evening approached, they returned to the hotel for rest. Laura found herself reflecting on the unexpected intensity of the trip, the way simple moments, conversations, and shared experiences had created an emotional intimacy she had not anticipated. There was a warmth, a bond of trust, and a sense of mutual respect that transcended ordinary family dynamics. It was personal, profound, and entirely appropriate. Yet it carried a depth that touched her unexpectedly. Dinner that night was casual. At a nearby cafe they had discovered the first day. The conversation was light at first, filled with laughter and stories, but it naturally shifted toward reflection on the trip so far. Jake spoke about his excitement for the future, the lessons he had learned, and how he valued the opportunity to spend time with Laura outside the routine of daily life. Laura shared her own reflections, emphasizing the importance of personal growth, curiosity, and empathy. The dialogue was honest, emotional, and quietly transformative. Before turning in for the night, they shared one last quiet moment on the balcony. The city stretched out before them, a canvas of lights and movement. Jake spoke softly about feeling grateful for the trip, for her guidance, and for the space to express himself. The next morning, Laura awoke to the faint sound of the city stirring outside their hotel room. The trip was nearly over, and she felt a mix of anticipation and melancholy. She glanced at Jake, who was already awake, quietly packing his things. There was a calmness in his demeanor, a quiet confidence that hadn't been there at the start of the journey. Over the past 2 days, he had grown in ways she hadn't expected, not just in maturity, but in emotional awareness and attentiveness. They had a few last meetings scheduled that morning, and Jake expressed interest in attending once again. Laura agreed, seeing how engaged he had been and how naturally he fit into these professional spaces. Walking into the conference room together, she noticed the warm smiles of the clients who had met him before. Their ease and friendliness underscored the impression Jake had left. Intelligent, respectful, and observant, Laura felt a quiet pride. His presence wasn't just educational for Hamet had, positively influenced the environment around them. The meetings proceeded smoothly. Jake asked questions with a thoughtful tone, sometimes offering insights that surprised even Laura. He was learning to articulate his thoughts confidently, while also listening actively. Laura admired his ability to balance curiosity with respect, engagement with restraint. She felt a wave of gratitude for the trip, recognizing how meaningful this time together had become. After the morning sessions, they returned to the hotel for a brief pause before exploring the city one last time. Jake suggested a walk along the Riverwalk, an idea Laura embraced. The afternoon was warm, sunlight reflecting off the water, casting shimmering patterns on the buildings. Their conversation shifted seamlessly between reflections on their experiences, personal dreams, and observations about the city. Jake spoke about how inspired he felt by the architecture, the history, and even the rhythm of the city's life. Laura shared stories of her own travels, recounting moments of awe, challenges, and lessons learned. As they walked, Jake became more candid about his feelings. He admitted that this trip had been unexpectedly important to him, a rare chance to connect with someone who truly listened. Laura listened with genuine interest, providing reassurance and encouragement. She reflected on her own life, realizing how much she had gained from observing Jake's perspective. His honesty, curiosity, and sensitivity had made her see familiar experiences in a fresh light. They paused at a small cafe overlooking the river for a late lunch. The setting was relaxed, with soft background music and the gentle murmur of other diners. Their conversation continued to flow naturally, moving from lighthearted stories to deeper reflections on life and personal growth. Jake shared thoughts he hadn't voiced at home, expressing appreciation for the freedom to explore ideas without judgment. Laura responded thoughtfully, highlighting the importance of self-expression, confidence, and listening to one's instincts. The afternoon blurred into evening as they visited a small art gallery tucked into a quiet street. Jake's engagement was genuine and reflective. He asked questions about technique, meaning, and artistic interpretation, listening attentively to Laura's explanations. She found herself pleasantly surprised by his insights, realizing he had absorbed more than she had anticipated. Their dialogue was intellectually stimulating, emotionally supportive, and fully appropriate, a perfect blend of learning and connection. Returning to the hotel, Laura and Jake shared a quiet moment on the balcony, overlooking the city as lights began to twinkle in the dusk. There was a reflective silence, a comfortable space where words weren't necessary. Then Jake spoke softly, his voice thoughtful. "I didn't expect this trip to mean so much to me," he admitted. "I thought it would just be about watching you work, but it's more than that. It's about understanding things, understanding life, and understanding myself." Laura felt a lump in her throat, touched by his honesty. She responded with gentle reassurance, emphasizing that self-discovery was a journey, and moments like this trip were valuable opportunities to reflect and grow. The conversation shifted to dreams and aspirations, Jake's plans for college, his ambitions, and the kind of person he wanted to become. Laura shared her own reflections on challenges she had faced at his age, the lessons learned, and the value of patience and perseverance. Later that evening, they went for a quiet dinner at a small, intimate restaurant Laura had spotted the first day. The ambiance was warm, with soft lighting and the gentle clinking of glasses in the background. Conversation flowed naturally, ranging from professional reflections to personal anecdotes. Jake expressed a thoughtful curiosity about Laura's career, asking questions about moments that had shaped her, decisions that had changed her path, and advice she would give to someone starting out. Laura answered candidly, appreciating his curiosity and willingness to listen. After dinner, they took a slow walk back to the hotel, the city streets alive with movement and light. Their conversation turned to reflection on the trip's impact. Jake spoke about how this experience had changed the way he viewed relationships, learning, and personal growth. He expressed gratitude for the time spent together, for the guidance, and for the opportunity to see Laura as a mentor and confidant. Laura felt a profound sense of fulfillment, recognizing the significance of the trust and connection that had developed between them. Back in the hotel room, they unpacked and prepared for the journey home. The atmosphere was calm, filled with comfortable silence and occasional reflections on the day. They discussed small routines, plans for the next week, and ways to continue supporting each other emotionally and intellectually. It was a moment of quiet intimacy, safe and deeply meaningful, highlighting the trust and understanding that had grown over the course of the trip. Before bed, they sat by the window overlooking the river, reflecting on their shared experiences. Jake spoke about feeling more confident, more aware of his potential, and more connected to the people around him. Laura responded with encouragement, emphasizing the importance of self-awareness, empathy, and nurturing relationships that matter. They shared a long, thoughtful conversation, full of emotional depth and reflective insight. It was a moment neither would forget. It's a culmination of the emotional journey they had undertaken together. That night, Laura lay in bed contemplating the trip's significance. She realized that this experience had shifted the dynamics of their relationship profoundly. There was now a sense of mutual respect, trust, and understanding that went beyond ordinary family interactions. She felt proud of Jake, grateful for the opportunity to mentor and guide him, and deeply moved by his emotional growth. The bond they had formed was grounded in empathy, shared experience, and thoughtful communication, entirely appropriate, deeply meaningful, and transformative in subtle ways. The next morning, they packed and checked out, ready to return home. The journey back was quiet, filled with reflection and small exchanges. Jake expressed his gratitude again, emphasizing how much he had learned and grown during the trip. Laura encouraged him to carry forward the lessons, remain curious, and continue seeking meaningful connections in his life. Their dialogue was sincere, heartfelt, and deeply supportive, a reflection of the emotional journey they had shared. Back home, the transition to daily life felt smoother than Laura had expected. The trip had created a foundation of trust and understanding that strengthened their everyday interactions. Jake seemed more confident, more self-aware, and more reflective, while Laura felt a renewed sense of purpose as a mentor and family figure. They continued to share meaningful conversations, small moments of guidance, and reflections on life, maintaining the bond cultivated during the trip. Weeks later, Laura reflected on the experience with a sense of accomplishment. The journey had not only facilitated Jake's growth, but it also deepened her own understanding of mentorship, trust, and emotional connection. She appreciated how moments of guidance, shared experience, and attentive listening could transform ordinary interactions into profound relationships. The lessons from the trip extended beyond professional observation. They were about life, growth, and meaningful human connection. Jake, too, carried the experience forward. He demonstrated more confidence in school, shared his reflections more openly with family, and approached new challenges with thoughtfulness and maturity. The trip had been a turning point, a moment of growth, reflection, and emotional connection that would shape his path for years to come. Laura felt a quiet satisfaction, recognizing that their journey had created lasting bonds rooted in understanding, empathy, and mutual respect. In retrospect, the trip had begun as a simple business-related task, but had evolved into a deeply transformative experience. Laura had discovered new aspects of Jake's character, fostered emotional growth, and strengthened their connection in ways that were entirely positive and appropriate. Jake had learned lessons in observation, reflection, and emotional awareness, all within a safe and nurturing environment. Together, they had navigated challenges, shared insights, and built a foundation of trust that would endure beyond the confines of a hotel, a city, or a single journey. As Laura settled back into her home routine, she found herself carrying forward the quiet lessons of the trip,